The Galactic Council had existed for 12,000 years. In that time they had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched stars die and new worlds form. They had created laws that governed warfare itself. Every species followed these laws. Every species understood that war had structure, order, and honor. Then the humans arrived. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. His four eyes scanned the tactical display with growing confusion. The human fleet had been surrounded. 300 warships formed a perfect sphere around the 47 human vessels. By every calculation, by every rule of engagement, the humans should have surrendered. That was the law. When outnumbered by more than 5-1, a fleet must yield. This was how civilized species conducted war. But the humans had not surrendered. Instead, they had done something that made no sense. They had turned off their engines. Their weapons went cold. Their shields dropped. For 17 standard minutes, they simply floated there in the darkness of space, had ordered his forces to hold position. Perhaps the humans were preparing their surrender transmission. Perhaps they were experiencing some technical failure. Then the human ships exploded. Not in the way ships explode when destroyed. They exploded outward, breaking apart into thousands of smaller pieces. Each piece had its own engine. Each piece carried weapons. The 47 human vessels became 9,000 attack drones in the span of 60 heartbeats. The formation, designed to contain large warships, suddenly found itself filled with enemies too small and too fast to track. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, 231 ships had been destroyed. The remaining vessels retreated in chaos. The human drones reassembled into their original configurations and continued toward space. News of the defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. High Admiral of the Empire read the report 3 times. She could not believe what she was seeing. The humans had violated 17 different articles of the Galactic War Convention. Ships were not allowed to break apart during combat. This was considered deception of the highest order. Weapons platforms had to be clearly identified as weapons platforms. Hiding military capability inside civilian-looking structures was forbidden. The punishment for such violations was severe. The offending species would face sanctions, blockades, and potential military action from the entire council. But punishing the humans would require defeating them first, and no one seemed capable of doing that. The Empire decided to try. They were the oldest military power in the known galaxy. Their armies had conquered 1,000 worlds. Their generals had studied warfare for longer than most species had existed. High Admiral assembled a ground force of 2 million soldiers and transported them to the human colony world of Nu. This time, there would be no space battle. They would land their troops and capture the planet according to proper military doctrine. The landing went perfectly. Drop ships touched down on the plains outside the main human city. Soldiers formed their battle lines with precision that came from centuries of training. They marched toward the city in perfect formation, their energy weapons charged and ready. The humans had only 50,000 defenders. The mathematics of war said this battle was already won. They reached the city limits and stopped. There were no walls. There were no defensive positions. There were no soldiers visible anywhere. The city appeared completely empty. High Admiral ordered her forces to advance with caution. Perhaps the humans had abandoned the colony. Perhaps they had fled into the wilderness. Her troops entered the city streets and found nothing but silence. Then the buildings started fighting back. Every structure in the city had been converted into a weapon. Windows became gun ports. Walls slid open to reveal missile launchers. The streets themselves were rigged with explosives that could be detonated remotely. Soldiers found themselves attacked from every direction by an enemy they could not see. The humans were inside the buildings, inside the sewers, on the rooftops, and in tunnels beneath the ground. They wore no uniforms. They carried weapons disguised as tools. Civilians picked up rifles and fired at soldiers before disappearing into hidden passages. This was not how war was supposed to work. The Galactic War Convention clearly stated that military personnel must be clearly marked. They must wear identifying symbols so that enemies could distinguish them from non-combatants. Civilians were not allowed to participate in combat. Attacking from hidden positions without first announcing your presence was considered cowardice. The humans violated all of these rules without hesitation. High Admiral lost 400,000 soldiers in 3 days. Her remaining forces retreated to their landing zone and called for extraction. The humans had defended their city with a fraction of the expected troops. They had turned every building, every street, and every citizen into a weapon. The Empire had never experienced such a defeat. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from all 73 member species gathered in the Great Hall of Judgment. They had one purpose. They would declare humanity a rogue species. They would authorize combined military action from every member world. They would crush the humans with overwhelming force and restore order to galactic warfare. Ambassador Wei stood alone before the assembled representatives. She was the only human present. Her dark eyes showed no fear as she faced the angry voices calling for her species to be punished. When the chamber finally grew quiet, she spoke in a calm and measured tone. She asked them a simple question: why did they create rules for warfare? The answer came from multiple directions. Rules prevented unnecessary destruction. Rules protected civilians. Rules ensured that wars ended quickly and cleanly. Rules maintained honor between combatants. Ambassador nodded slowly. She then asked another question: who did these rules actually protect? The chamber fell silent. She explained what human historians had learned long ago. Rules of warfare were created by the powerful to protect the powerful. They ensured that large armies would always defeat small armies. They guaranteed that wealthy nations could overwhelm poor nations. They made war predictable, and predictability always favored the side with more resources. Humans had never had more resources. On Earth, they had always been the smaller army, the nation, the weaker side. They survived by refusing to play by rules that were designed to destroy them. They hid in forests and struck from shadows. They turned farming tools into weapons. They made their enemies afraid to sleep. They won battles that mathematics said they should have lost. And now they brought those lessons to the stars. The chamber erupted in outrage. Representatives shouted that the humans were barbarians. They were uncivilized. They had no honor. They would destroy everything the galaxy had built. Ambassador waited for silence again. Then she made humanity's position clear. Humans did not want war. They wanted peace. They wanted trade. They wanted to join the galactic community as equals, but they would never agree to rules that made them easy to conquer. They would never fight in ways that guaranteed their defeat. If the galaxy wanted peace with humanity, the galaxy would have to accept that humans fought differently. If the galaxy wanted war, humans would show them what war really looked like. She left the chamber without another word. The Galactic Council debated for 6 standard months. During that time, 3 more military actions against human worlds failed completely. The Syndicate have tried to blockade a human trade route. Human ships simply flew through their formation at speeds that should have been impossible. The engines had been modified beyond their safety limits. Several human vessels were destroyed by their own velocity, but enough survived to break the blockade and deliver their cargo. The Dominion of Shadows attempted to infiltrate human computer networks. They discovered that humans had created something called chaos protocols. Their systems were deliberately unstable, constantly changing, filled with false information and traps for digital intruders. Dominion intelligence agents reported that trying to hack human systems was like trying to hold water in your hands. Everything slipped away the moment you thought you had it. The Holy Empire of the Three Suns sent their elite warrior priests to challenge human champions in ritual combat. The humans accepted the challenge, then sent their champions wearing explosive devices. When the warrior priests gained the upper hand, The human champions detonated themselves. The explosions killed both fighters along with the priest's spiritual advisors who stood nearby as witnesses. The Holy Empire declared this blasphemy. The humans called it victory. Slowly, the galaxy began to understand something important. Humans did not see rules as sacred things to be obeyed. They saw rules as tools that could be used or discarded depending on the situation. They did not fight for honor or glory. They fought to win. They fought to survive. They would sacrifice themselves without hesitation if it meant their people would live another day. This made them terrifying, but it also made them valuable. Trade negotiations resumed. Human merchants proved to be aggressive but honest. They delivered what they promised. They kept their contracts. They simply refused to accept contracts that put them at a disadvantage. The galaxy learned to negotiate differently with humans. You had to be direct. You had to be fair. You could not rely on traditions or unwritten rules to protect your interests. Military treaties followed. Human commanders were asked to study the defenses of several member worlds. They found weaknesses that had existed for centuries, weaknesses that no one had ever exploited because exploiting them would have violated the conventions of war. The humans fixed these weaknesses. They taught their new allies how to think differently about defense. 10 years after first contact, humanity was officially welcomed into the Galactic Council. The ceremony was small and simple. Humans apparently disliked grand displays. Ambassador Wei accepted membership on behalf of her species with a short speech about cooperation and mutual respect. She did not mention the wars that had been fought. She did not speak of the armies that had fallen. She simply looked forward to a future where humans and aliens worked together. Commander attended the ceremony. He had resigned his military commission after the disaster at the human blockade. He now worked as a consultant for the Council's new Strategic Adaptation Division. His job was to identify rules that no longer served their purpose. His job was to think like a human. He watched Ambassador accept the membership crystal. He remembered his confusion on the bridge of the Eternal Judgment. He remembered wondering why the humans would not surrender. Now he understood. Surrender was a rule. Rules were tools, and humans used every tool available to achieve their goals. The galaxy had learned this lesson the hard way. Armies had fallen. Traditions had shattered. Ancient certainties had crumbled into dust. But from that destruction, something new had emerged. A galaxy that was more flexible, more creative, and more prepared for the unknown challenges of the future. All because one strange species refused to follow the rules.